ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us for this little chat on Industry 4.0, the role of mobile private networks in Industry 4.0, and our experiences in enabling and implementing some of the Greenfield and Brownfield factories that we have implemented. So I'm pleased to be with Shankar, who is the CIO of Sundaram Clayton. Sundaram Clayton has been a pioneer in some of these Industry 4.0 transformation initiatives, and we at LTTS are glad to work with him and his team on implementing those visions. So let's get started by hearing from Shankar in terms of what were the objectives of this journey that they embarked on, and what were the end objectives, and how they went about determining the role of a private 5G network in this journey.
Thank you, Rakesh. Great to be here. So, good afternoon, everybody. So, to your question, Rakesh, on where Sundaram Clayton decided to go in for a 5G deployment. But prior to that, our journey started about 3 years ago when we decided to bring in IoT enablement to all our plants, right? So our business is primarily manufacture of aluminum die castings, and aluminum die casting is a very complex business. We work at very harsh temperatures, very high temperatures, and under very tough conditions. It's an extremely complex process. To get an optimal data out of our manufacturing, we needed to pull performance of the machines into a common platform to analyze how well our manufacturing flow was happening, what is the efficiency we were doing, how we were consuming energy, and how we were handling aluminum, the efficiencies. A lot of those operating parameters which couldn't otherwise be gathered manually, we had to get to it to streamline our operations. That's when the IoT journey started, and we connected all our, started connecting all our machines in the different plants, and started pulling the data. So that was the beginning of the IoT journey about 3 years ago. And there was a brief disruption because of COVID when everything came to a grinding halt. But nevertheless, whatever was connected did help in those days. As we progressed on this, we realized that we were going to be expanding, creating new facilities in India and abroad. And we decided that we needed to have a better and more efficient infrastructure to get to our customers. Our customers are top-notch brands across the globe, and to meet their standards, our standards also had to be much higher than their own. So when we looked at all these parameters, what was needed was a very resilient infrastructure, a very low latency infrastructure, because some of the operating parameters needed to be secured in a very rapid fashion. It is very difficult to connect our high temperature furnaces with sensors and pull cables through that, because the cables simply will not stay forever, right? That is ambient condition into which we were working. So when we evaluated various parameters, and including Wi-Fi solution, there was a lot of other issues that came about, and that is where we looked at the 5G options. So before I go into the 5G option, one of the considerations was who could provide that. And if you recollect, last year around this time is when the government of India also announced the opening up of the 5G capabilities across the country, and your company L&T had done some groundwork, experimental work. So we felt that with your engineering credentials and your legacy, we could approach you, and that is the history of where we were. Over to you, Rakesh. You can talk a little bit about L&T at this point of time, and then I'll come back to how Sundaram Clayton has taken advantage of it in our journey.
Yes. So he's right in the sense that LTTS was a natural partner for them in this journey. Now, most of us know that LTTS has this engineering DNA inherited from L&T. We do a lot of work in engineering R&D with manufacturing, with rail, with aerospace, with process industry, and a lot of other verticals. However, not many might be aware that we are also very strong in telecom and high-tech segment. We have been working with a lot of our customers in R&D, in product development, as well as field services for a lot of telecom equipment, be it 4G base stations, 5G base stations, the core network elements, the XHAL transport equipment, the mobile devices, and so on and so forth. So with this background, it was natural for us to play the system integrator role that is vital for the Industry 4.0 transformation. And we kind of bring the capabilities from both the telecom domain as well as the other industry verticals to be able to do this. And that really led us to work with Shankar and his organization as well as other similar clients in similar areas. That was about the planning part. That was about the initiation part. But the challenges of defining the roadmap of the journey, it's not about, he talked about the complexities involved. It's not about taking up one or two use cases and fixing the problem in a few months. It requires the definition and a planning of a roadmap that spans over 3 to 5 years, if not less. So let's hear from Shankar on what were the challenges in defining and planning the roadmap, and why the choice of the right partner is imperative in making such a decisions and building a roadmap for such a journey.
Thanks, Rakesh. So when our initiation process started, when we looked at considering 5G as a potential infrastructure platform for our networking, the biggest question was, will it work, right? We've seen 5G towers, 5G on phones, but in an industrial environment, would a private 5G network, would it ever work, right? So that was a big issue for us. So we called upon L&T and a telecom partner. We sat down together and suggested, all three of us agreed that we will look at a proof of technology project to see whether, to evaluate whether this whole concept was going to work in our environment. Remember that, in a die-casting environment where there are a lot of furnaces and machinery that are complex, there are also a lot of Faraday zones, right, because of the heavy magnetic and electric fields that are sitting there. So these could potentially interfere with any kind of signals that could be generated, and we weren't sure whether these things would actually work. So we embarked on a proof of technology project wherein we got spectrum allocated to us through the telecom partner, and they established the radio and the core and the radio. Our system integration partner that's all. plant. Our emissions will be better controlled. We'll be able to handle molten material very efficiently. We are very confident that some of the use cases that we are going to be having in terms of scrapyard management and quality inspection use cases, all this will yield a significant amount of benefit to the company that will in turn give a payback from the overall investment perspective. Obviously, the investments will be lower. The ROI will be lower if the investments are, to be made on and board over and above what we already have. But if you are starting in a greenfield, I think it is a perfect solution to have. So the ROI will vary business to business for sure, and each business has to make a call on whether they want it or not. But my view is that in the future, a 5G platform is going to be a must for most manufacturing businesses, especially in engineering, to gather the data in a short time frame and then give the insights to the operating management to make quick decisions on what they do. That's my view,
Sure,
Rakesh.
thanks. So, adding on to some of the points that you mentioned about the challenges involved in the use cases that you mentioned, from the SI's perspective, the way we approach this is we kind of deploy what is best of breed today to cover as many use cases that are required by our customer, and architect the solution in such a way that the use cases that are not covered today due to technology limitations could be easily added on as part of the implementation as per the roadmap. Let me give some examples. Now, one of our customers, they came up with 19 use cases. And they said, we want this to be implemented over a 5-year roadmap. Now, so we said for the 9 use cases out of 19, Wi-Fi is a good technology to be used for a private network. It solves the requirement. And then for the remaining ones, except 2, where the latency requirements were too stringent, let's start with a 4G private network. However, work with such a partner who can provide a very easy upgrade path to 5G as we move towards the 3rd year, and hence to be able to accommodate the last 2 use cases that are required for the customer. However, there is one challenge here. When we think about the management system that is required for the IT team of the customer, they would prefer a single management system irrespective of the technologies involved. So this is where we as a system integrator, we say, let's start with a management system that covers the technologies from the Brownfield perspective, but architect in such a way that the upcoming technology elements are also easily incorporated and integrated into the management system. This is one example. When we talk about the edge versus cloud deployment architectures, and that is something that will come for them in the subsequent months, some of the applications require deployment on the edge node, especially the low latency use cases. And some that are primarily monitoring and analytics do not require that kind of real-time processing, so they can run in the cloud. Now, if it is going to be a greenfield deployment, we can make these technology choices upfront and the architecture can take care of that. But if it is an existing system, then we need to work with whatever is existing without disrupting it, plan for the new requirements. And this architecture requires a kind of automated and intelligent system that determines how the placement of the network and application workloads are to be handled between the edge systems as well as the cloud systems. This is where we kind of test these architectures and placements and performance activities in our lab. And that is one example of taking care of both the present and the future requirements. energy efficiency is one important requirement for them and for everybody else. We are working with our semiconductor partners. So there are two interventions or two areas of interventions as far as the network energy consumption is concerned. One is the radio part, where we talk about RUs. The other is the virtualized infrastructure, meaning the servers on which all the virtualized workloads are running. So how do we really reduce the energy consumption in these two areas is by working closely with our semiconductor partners who provide the RF socks, for example, for the radio unit, who provide the CPUs, for example, for the server elements, and integrate those. I mean, these solutions really work at the very low power states of the CPUs and the RF SoCs. And they require very close interaction and working with our semiconductor partners to integrate such solutions at a very low level and integrate them with intelligent systems like SMO and RAN intelligent controller. And some of these solutions are not available for the existing chipset. They are on the roadmap from the semiconductor vendors, so we need to work closely with them to align those solutions with the roadmap that they want to implement. AI, when we go to AI, now that is also something that we are working on in our labs. It's not, we will not be able to give them today. But for some of their use cases that are coming up in future, the kind of determinism that is required, today we are not really getting into creating a wireless network for motion control, for example. I mean, that is too stringent to be implemented today. That has a latency requirement of less than 1 millisecond. But when we plan for 5 years down the line, those are the things we are already looking at how to really implement them. We are working closely with industry communities like 5G, ACIA, MFA, and so on and so forth. Telecom infra project is another area where a lot of performance testing gets done. So some of these AI and positioning solutions that are going to come up in future, we are already working on them in our labs with the intent that we will incorporate them into their factories over a 3 to 4 year roadmap. So kind of this is what I wanted to share from the LTTS perspective. The way we work is deploy what is best today, but architect for the roadmap. Any closing comments you would want to?
Yeah, so I think it has been a very exciting journey. We have been, there's a huge learning curve. Your business should have the appetite to have the foresight to both absorb the learning curve and also see the end benefits as you embark on this journey. But this is a journey that is going to be inevitable for Indian industry in the years to come. So the earlier you embark on it, it will be great. But before we conclude, would you like to ask the audience if there are any questions?
Do we have some time for the questions? Okay.
If there are questions, we'll be happy to take them.
Thank you for the very interesting case study. India has a very thriving ecosystem of startups. So in this particular project, do you see any scope for startups to contribute in any specific area that you see? What would be your guidance to startups and younger companies to contribute in? Because obviously there are pieces which they cannot, and there may be pieces which they could. And the second part of the question is, for those younger companies or startups, do you see them more approaching the manufacturer directly or working through likes of LTTS instead of going directly to the manufacturer? Thank you.
Sure. So we are working very closely with the startups to answer the first point. In fact, the setup that we have put up in our booth here, that has the 5G core from a startup called A5G Networks. The RAN is from a startup called Lekha Wireless. So the entire network is from startups. When we go to the use cases, we have partners like Peer Robotics who provide material handling robots. They are a startup. And it's a huge list. We work with a lot of, even for AR, VR, we have partnerships with startups. So the answer to your first part of the question is yes, we do work with startups, and they really bring in a lot of technologies that are needed for the market. And for the second point, maybe we will hear from Shankar his view. But typically what we have observed is the customer wants to have a single point of contact as far as the overall ownership of the deliverable is concerned. So sometimes the telco plays that role in our experience, and in some cases it's the enterprise or a system integrator like LTTS who plays that role. Your view?
Yeah, so, startup ecosystem, I have my views on that. It's a great opportunity, okay, and especially in the build of the use cases. But it is also the time and the relevance to the business that is also going to be very critical. And when an industrial organization wants to absorb some of these use cases, especially from startups, it has to come through a validated channel, right? And that's where companies like LTTS would play a significant role. So my suggestion is startups work within an ambit of a system integrator to do that validation before it can be taken to a business. A business will not have the time to experiment as much with startup solutions as an SI would have. So that's a view that I carry. Okay, maybe not necessarily what you want to hear, but it is what it is, right? The risk versus reward ratio is very different. I don't know where I answered your question. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Then I think we are good to go.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
having us here.
Thank you.